why learning a second language is actually a bit easier than learning your first language. So, for those of you guys who don't know me and my approach, my language learning history, I started off monolingual and became bilingual, hence the book Becoming Bilingual. But learning a second language is quite a bit more involved than learning a third language or learning a fourth language or learning any of that. But learning your first language is quite a bit more work than learning a second language. We just many times don't realize it because we don't think about everything that we've had to do learning our first language. So looking at our first language, like, we have to start learning from basically birth. You know, we start listening and then we start speaking a little bit, and then we start to speak a little bit more, and then we start to do a little bit of reading and writing, and we go to school for 12 years, and we do all of that in our native language, at least here in the States, in California, they're grade K through 12, so actually 13 years. So 13 years of practicing English. And we have English classes that entire time from, like, and even more so than just English classes, like high school English or language arts, or middle school as well, English or language arts, however they call them, their English classes. We have our reading and writing in elementary school and grade school, and it goes all the way through. And even when we're not explicitly learning English, like grammar and writing essays and all of that, we still are practicing the language because, well, one, because we live here, so we're constantly exposed to the language, we're listening and speaking, and we are also reading and writing in all of our subjects in English. So, and then of course, like, if you're in another country, then it just is that language, and that is your first language, and you experience something similar, most likely, with that language. But for here, it's English, so for the purpose of this video, English is the native language, and then your native language, you just substitute that in and modify as needed. But we do English all the way through. That is extensive English practice. So then when you try to learn a second language, like for me, learning Spanish, it doesn't take quite as long. Like, you go through classes in high school, usually we start and do those, or sometimes even earlier, and you study that and you practice it, but it doesn't take as long because those skills transfer. So your ability to read and write and speak and listen transfer into that other language. You just have to learn all of those vocabulary and grammar and all of that, and then apply those skills to that language. So it's actually quite a bit faster and quite a bit easier than your first language, because if you remember back to, like, learning how to read and write in, like, third grade especially, like, that is about when students should know how to read and write independently, and it's not great, it's not good, but they can do it independently, and they can mostly, yeah, they can read and they can write and they can they can write legibly and they can speak clearly, and of course, and then they can read, like, grade level material. But before that, it's learning how to read and write, and that is really the focus, because you can't do anything in school without reading and writing. You can't do math, you can't do science, you can't do history, you can't do anything, because you have to read a book and then you have to write about it. So that really is that core. And then when we learn another language, it's kind of like a subject. So it's about the equivalent of a subject, learning that, and then just having those core skills to infuse into that subject, and then learn that subject, just like you would learn, like, anything new. Like, you start learning, use math as an example, because I was a math teacher for a little while, and so it is very similar to that. Like, learning a language is really quite like learning math, and you get in there and you start practicing it, and again, reading and writing, and you apply those skills, and then you have that language. So it is intense practice. Like, I'm not saying that it's not. Of course, it's a lot of work, and it is hours and hours, and it's thousands of hours to get to fluency in another language, but it's thousands of hours more that you put into your native language. You have put thousands of hours more into your native language than you typically do into your foreign language. So yes, that is why it is easier to learn your second language than it is to learn your first But then again, it is also easier to learn a third and a fourth and a fifth and so on and so on and so on, because you also are, that second language also has a challenge of learning how to learn language. Because for my experience, at least, growing up monolingual, becoming bilingual, it is a process of learning not only the language, but how to learn language. So a little bit of linguistics in there as well, hence why we are vigilantes linguistics, because I love linguistics and it's in everything that I do. And I just love that process of learning not just language, but how to learn language and what composes language. And that is necessary to learn that second language, even if we're not directly studying linguistics. So that is quite a challenge for most people, because again, that's the math side, really. That is the science of language, that linguistics, and that's why it feels like, but that's the subject, really. You're learning like two subjects. So you think of it that way. You have your native language, right? All that practice, native language is infused into everything. And then you have your second language, that is a subject, and then you have linguistics, that is another subject. So when you're learning that second language and you're learning like direct object and indirect object pronouns and verbs and conjugations and all of that, that is a subject all of its own, because that's not just like language specific, that is linguistics. So that is something that can be applied to different languages, and then that's why it becomes easier to learn multiple languages after you get past that hurdle of becoming bilingual. And that's all I got for you guys. So thank you so much for watching till the end, and feel free to leave any comments, questions, anything down below, and I will see you guys back here in 3 days for another video. Bye guys.